Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, I've got a blues shuffle that's played in the key of B flat, and this is really designed to give you some ideas to help your blues playing sound a little more sophisticated. So we're going to be playing some outside the box jazzy licks, kind of throwing those into the blues, but in a very simple and understandable way. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video, we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, download the tablature, download the MP3 jam tracks, which I have in multiple tempos. Get all of the learning materials. You can get that by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP352. Alright, so the guitar that I'm using this week is an Epiphone Sheraton 2. Now, I love this guitar. I've had it for many years, and I played around the house quite a bit, and I've used it in videos in the past. It's just been a while since it's made an appearance. The reason I'm even mentioning that is because I get emails from people often asking for a good, affordable hollow body guitar. What would I recommend? Now, I would recommend the Epiphone line of guitars for that, because they have, I think, the best, like whether it be Sheraton or the Casino, they have some really good hollow body guitars that are great players. And this guitar, I didn't do anything to it. I bought it here in Nashville. I think I paid $400 for it. Now, I bought it used. I don't remember what they sell for new, but I mean, you know, all I did was put new strings on it. And so anyway, take a look at Epiphone's line of guitars. I'm not getting anything from Epiphone. I just wanted to mention that for those of you that are interested. So let's talk about this song. Now, this is a blues. It's a 1-4-5 blues that's played in B flat. Now, I realize that's not a common key for guitar. A lot of times we're playing in the key of E or A, keys that have these open strings in them. But B flat is a key that's very common for horn players or common for piano players. And so we're going to be playing in that key. And it's nice because it's sort of between the fret markers. I look at it that way, or think of it that way. So it kind of forces you to not necessarily rely so much on the specific fret you're on, but as to the shape in relation to the first chord. It's going to make sense as we get into it. So, all right. So the 1 chord then would be a B flat. The 4 chord is an E flat. And then the 5 chord is an F. So we're playing B flat, E flat, F. Those are the 3 chords we're playing over. Now the first thing that happens, and this is a swing blues, so it's kind of, it's got that swing rhythm to it. The first thing that happens is this. That's the first lick we're going to learn. And it comes in right on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I'm doing there, let me show you how to play it, then I'll show you how to visualize it or think about it. So I'm borrowing the first 3 strings on the 8th fret, and I'm doing hybrid picking here. So I'm picking on the 3rd string, and then I'm plucking with my ring finger on the 1st string. I'm doing both of those at the same time. So you're going to have to hybrid pick that. And as soon as I do that, I do a hammer on with my with my middle finger to the 7th fret, 3rd string. Now, what is that? Let's analyze this. So that's just your B chord. So this is using the E chord shape. This is out of caged. So we take that E chord shape. We capo here on the 8th fret. If we look at strings 3 and 1 out of that chord, that's what we're playing. So we're basically just building that B flat chord. So we start with that. And then what I'm doing there is I'm continuing to hybrid pick. So I'm still picking on the 3rd string, but I'm going to now go with my ring finger up to the 8th fret, and then it slides up to the 9th fret, and then comes back to the 8th, and then we do the hammer on again. Now what is that? Let's look at the minor pentatonic scale pattern 1 in relation to that chord. So we have, so when I'm doing this, I'm just hitting the notes out of that, well, that would be a note in the minor pentatonic scale. But then when I slide up to here, I'm actually going into the blues scale. So that would be considered your blue note. So the blues scale is the same scale as the minor pentatonic scale. There's just that extra note, which is called the blue note. But that's what I'm doing. So you can remember that if you just leave this video and you walk away with nothing else. Now if you're playing a blues jam and you're playing rhythm or you're playing lead, you can work in that or some variation of that. It's a great little fill rhythm lick. It's also great to use for lead. Now after that, I throw in a lick that goes, and you can hear right there, we go to the 4 chord, right? So let's look at that lick. Now that's all played in minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. So we're doing, so it's a bend and release on the 8th fret, and then we're down to the 6th fret 3rd string. And then we have, that's 8, 6, 8 on the 4th string. So all together, that's easy. It's a little box there. Now watch this. Now once we come to that 8th fret 4th string, we're going to take our middle finger and play the 8th fret 5th string, 6th fret 4th string, back to the 8th fret 5th string. So we have, and then this is what defines the 4 chord. So coming, and I'll explain that, but that's coming down to the 5th fret 4th string, and then the 6th fret 5th string. So all together that like slowly goes like this. Now how is that defining the 4 chord? Well, I think of, you have your 1 chord here, so all of the stuff I was playing in that minor pentatonic scale sort of represented under the 1 chord. But then when you come down to those 2 notes, look at the 4 chord. If I were to play it like this, if I were to play the E flat 7, those 2 notes are in that chord, and you can hear them. So just by targeting those notes that live in the chord, it makes your lead sound a lot more sophisticated. And to me, that's what jazz is all about, is really targeting notes that live in the chord shapes. And good jazz players, and I'm not one, I'm not a good jazz player at all, but I'm a wannabe. But I know the science behind it, and I know that a really good jazz player knows how to take the scale or the arpeggio that they're working on and target all those notes that are in the chords as they're going by. And it's kind of genius stuff in a way, because it's happening in real time and you're just processing all of that stuff. And the more of it you do, I will tell you this, the more of it you do, even taking a simple lick like this, the easier it gets. So just work in a little lick like this into your thinking, so that now you can easily target that 4 chord just with those 2 notes. That way you're not thinking about a whole scale and getting overwhelmed with it. You're just looking at 2 notes and how you can start to do that. Alright, so I'm going to play a slow version of the jam track now, and I'm going to play everything that we've learned so far just so you can hear how it sounds with the band behind it. So remember, it comes in on the 1, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Alright, so now we're playing over the 4 chord. We're in that part of the song where we're playing over the E flat. The next thing that I play goes... Now let me show you how to play that, and then we'll break it down so you'll understand exactly what these notes are and why they work. So, bar the first 3 strings on the 6th fret here, and we're going to slide it up to the 8th fret. So I'm starting on the 6th fret, and I'm starting by picking that 3rd string, sliding up to the 8th, and then I pluck. Now you could use your pick for this if you want, but I use my middle finger and ring finger on the right hand to pluck strings 1 and 2. So you have this. And then we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to slide it down to the 7th fret. So we're going to go 8th fret, 7th fret. So remember, that's picking the 3rd string, plucking strings 1 and 2. And then we have, so I'm going to take that bar back down to the 6th fret, pluck all 3 strings, and then put my pinky down. Some of you may want to use your ring finger for that, but that would be on the 8th fret 1st string. And it sounds like that. Now that's just a little embellishment using your pinky. But what are these notes? Well, remember, we're playing over the 4 chord, which is the E flat chord. So let's look at, instead of playing the E flat 7 chord like that, let's look at the E flat chord like this, just the E flat major chord. And look at where my pinky is. It's up here on the 8th fret. And look at where my index finger is. Now this is the A chord shape. I should have said that. This is the A chord shape out of caged. But we're playing the E flat chord. So my pinky's on the 8th fret. My index finger is on the 6th fret. And remember, and I've said this in other lessons, if I were to take the top 3 strings of that 8th fret where my pinky is and play that, that would be a 6th chord. So that would be the E flat 6th chord. If I were to walk it down where my index finger was, that would be the E flat 9 chord. So that, I'm just mentioning this chord shape to help you visualize it. That helps me when I can picture those two fingers making that chord shape. I know I can play the 6 and the 9 version of that same chord by doing that. I know that sounds probably confusing to some of you, but just trust me on that. These are variations off of that chord shape. So when you're playing the 4 chord, doesn't matter that it's an E flat. Just look at the shape. Now you can play this kind of jazzy version of that rhythm by walking down from the 6 to the 9 chord, and then putting your pinky in there is just an embellishment and that I use there. So you can use that going forward. Now you've got these two concepts that you can use. You've got that fill lick thing, and now you've got a really cool way to play off of the 4 chord. So after that, the song goes back to the 1 chord, and I just went back to that same thing that we started with. Little hammer on there, harmonized 6th off of the B flat. Now after that, to make it interesting and to give you another idea, I did. Now what is that? It has kind of a Western swing feel kind of thing. It sounds like an old Bob Wills song or something. Now what that is, well, let me show you how to play it first. Let's get into that. So this is super easy to play because it's like a little stair step here. We're on the 10th fret 1st string, 11th fret 2nd string, 12th fret 3rd string. Just playing the top 3 strings. Slide it down and then back. Now we're going to do the same thing but an octave lower. So we're going to do it here. Now this is the way that I think of this is the D7 chord shape. So if you think your D7 chord in first position, you play that shape, not the D7 chord, but the shape here. So I've got my ring finger on the 8th fret 2nd string, index finger is on the 7th fret 3rd string, middle finger is on the 8th fret 4th string. You're going to play strings 4, 3, and 2. You're going to slide it down just like you did before, the other one. Now let's put this in context so that you can use this Western swing type rhythm thing in anything you want to do going forward. So what is it? Well, remember we were just talking about playing the 6 to the 9 chord off of that E flat? Well, that's actually what we're doing here. We're not playing the 6 to the 9, but we are playing a 6 chord. So if that's my B flat chord, if I were to play this, now that sounds like a minor chord, and it is a minor chord. In fact, it's a G minor chord. Just remember, if you play the relative minor of the chord that you're trying to target. So in this case, it's a B flat. We're trying to target the relative minor. That's 1, 2, 3 frets down, so that'd be a G minor. If we play the G minor on top of that B flat chord, you get a 6 chord. That's what a 6 chord is. It's taking the root chord, or the root bass note, I should say. So in this case, the B flat. And then you play its relative minor chord along with it. The combination of those two gives you the 6 chord. That's what a 6 chord is. So when I came up here, I'm actually playing a G minor triad. I mean, that's one way to think of it. But that also happens to be the 6 chord. And just remember, if you want that sound, kind of jazzy Western swing sound, whatever chord you're on, just find the relative minor of that chord and play that. You can play a triad of that, and you'll get that vibe. All right, so after I played the two 6 chords over the B flat, now we go to the 5 chord, which is the F. And I played to give it that kind of jazzy feel. So what I'm doing there, that's the first 3 strings on the 8th fret. Slide it up 1 and then land right there on that. Now what is that? How is that? I know some of you are saying, how is that an F chord? Well, it's not an F chord, but it's an F9. And how is it an F9? Let's take the logic of what we just talked about before. Remember, I was saying for the E flat, if we look at that E flat chord, where our pinky is, where our index finger is, you got the 6 and the 9. Well, here's your F chord using the A chord shape. So there's your 6 and there's your 9. So when I went, I'm sliding into the 9 chord. So hopefully light bulbs are going off for some of you, and you're realizing this will be your takeaway. Let me pull it all together, all of these little tips here. Here's your 1 chord. There's your 4 chord. Look at that. It's right there in the same fret where you were barring. But remember, that would be like a 9 chord, right? back to your 1 chord. There's your 5 chord, which will be the 9. There's your 4 chord, which is a 9, and your 1 chord. So now you should see that you've got your 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. Let's go to the 5. 4, 1. Right? Huge lesson material right there. Just realizing all of those things live right off of that first position. Okay, so we go into the F chord, or the F9, so now you should understand why that's an F9. And then I followed up with a lick that goes... Let's look at that. That's just the minor pentatonic scale. That's what I was picturing. Right? But I'm walking into the major pentatonic scale as well by going into that 8th fret. But let me show you how to play it. It's I'm borrowing the first 2 strings here on the 9th fret, 8th fret, 6th fret. So 9, 8, 6. We're going to do the same thing on strings 2 and 3. So that makes it easy to visualize. It's just a pattern. And if you like the sound of that, it's kind of a Chuck Berry sound, kind of a full, double stop string thing. You can remember that off of your 1 chord. So if you're playing this in B flat, it's just the minor pentatonic scale. But instead of just playing 1 string, you're playing 2. That's probably the easiest way to think of it. So if we were doing it in G, it would look like that. All right. Now, after we come into that, I throw in a little turnaround like that goes like this. All of that is minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. It's really all played between the 8th fret and the 6th fret. So it's the 8th fret 4th string, 6th fret 3rd string, back to the 8th fret 4th string, 8th fret 3rd string, 6 on the 3rd string. That's 8 and 6 on the 4th. Now this is easier in the tablature, I realize, but... And then we're going to go... So that's just walking it down to the 5 chord. So it's 8, 6 on the 4th string, and then the 8th fret 5th string. And make sure you use your ring finger when you play that, so that you can go like this and play the rest of that 5 chord. That's your F7 chord. And that would be using your chord shape. If you were to look at a C chord, take that C chord shape, play it up here, and then put your pinky down on the, the 8th fret 3rd string. Just play the middle 4 strings. So you have, and I use that as a turnaround quite a bit in the blues. It doesn't matter where you're at. You know where that 5 chord is, so you could, how that when the 5 chord is coming, try and land right there. So just remember that off of your chord shape or off your minor pentatonic scale. However you can, whatever is easiest for you to picture, but make sure you get that ring finger there for the 5 chord, and then the rest of the fingers can fall in place and play the full chord. All right, so let's put on the slow version of the jam track. I'll play through it slowly, and we can cover everything we've learned thus far. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Alright, so now the song loops back and we're back to the 1 chord, and we have a whole new set of licks now, so hopefully you've got some great ideas from the first time through, and we're going to go through this 3 times through the course of this entire lesson. Now we're going into the second time, and I started with kind of like an Albert King style lick, where it almost sounds like you're saying something, you're definitely singing something there. By doing, making a statement and then coming back, it's more of a vocal quality. And that's my favorite way of playing blues. All my favorite blues artists tend to be that style, as opposed to somebody that's just shredding and playing all over the place, where my brain can't even process it. I like little statements. You know, that's really powerful to me. So, so to play that, I'm going to be in minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, right here between the 6th fret and the 8th fret. We're going to start on the 4th string, slide up to that 8th fret 4th string, 6th fret 3rd string, 8th fret 3rd string, and then a bend and release. Bend, release, and a pull off. So it goes like this. Look at that. That's that. I'm doing a pre-bend there on that 8th fret 3rd string, release, and then a pull off. I didn't pick that. So it sounds like that. And that's what gives it that vocal quality. You have full control with your left hand there. I mean, it's just, it really does sound like somebody talking to me. After that, I went 2 full bends there on the 8th fret 3rd string. Now, I put some vibrato in the top of that bend, which can be a bit of a challenge, but if you can't do it, just bend it and no vibrato, or if you've got a tremolo on your guitar, you can use that. That was the first time. And then the third, that was the second time. Third time, same thing that we did the first time. Okay, now we get into this this little outside the box kind of jazzy like that goes. And what that is, let me show you how to play it first, and then I'll kind of go through my thought process for it. It's actually very easy to play because it's a lot of repetition here. It's between the 6th fret and the 8th fret again, so we're still thinking minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, right in the middle of it there. And we're going to walk chromatically from the 6th, 7th, and 8th fret on the 4th string. We're going to do the same thing on the 3rd string. Pretty easy, right? And then we're going to come up to the 2nd string and we're going to play 6, 8, 9. So we got. Now from here, watch this. So from that 9th fret, we're going to walk chromatically all the way down to that E flat note, which would be the 8th fret 3rd string. So the 9th fret we have 8, 7, 6. That's on the 2nd string. Then there's the 9th fret 3rd string, and then that final note is on the 8th fret 3rd string. So from the beginning of that, and remember this 2nd note is actually where the 1 is. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's how you have to think about it. So that first note is like a pickup note, and to emphasize it, it would sound like this. The whole point of that, it really doesn't matter so much what I'm playing there as long as I land on that note. I land on the E flat note because we're playing the E flat, where that's the 4 chord. And that's where the 4 chord is. And so the tricky part of that isn't necessarily the notes, it's the timing, is knowing if you're going to do a fast run like that, you have to know where you can start that run so that you can end it on the right note. And that honestly took me, I had to kind of work it out. When I was improvising, I was kind of noodling around. I've heard other guitar players do this kind of thing, and I had to kind of do the science part of it as a little more scientific instead of art. Now that I know how to do it, I can totally do it. And that's the beauty of learning licks like this, is once you get this, you can use this like anytime you're playing a blues now and you want to go to the 4 chord. You can jump into it that way. Now, what is this? Well, there's different ways you can look at it. One way is chromatically. You know, you've got chromatic just means playing every note. So instead of me going just the notes in the minor pentatonic scale, one little trick is, and this is like a very powerful ingredient. So if you're cooking, you don't want to use a lot of this, but you can chromatically, you can play any of the notes in between, and that's what I'm doing. I'm using the parameters of that minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, but I'm filling in all the lines in between. And so that's kind of that's the way that I think of it. And again, you could try that. Just give it a try. If you're playing like pattern 2, you know, Albert King, try going, you know, filling in the notes, filling in the spaces in between the notes. You can get a different feel for it. Now, you just don't want to do a lot of it, and you don't want to land on those notes that are in between, because then it's going to sound really horrible. But if you're just doing it as a passing thing, it's going to sound pretty good. The other way you can think about this is the half step, whole step. scale, and that's a big Robin Ford scale. He uses that a lot. In fact, the next lick that we're going to learn, the next part, I was thinking half step, whole step scale. That's just something that a lot of the really good players do. I try and do it a little bit, but I'll be honest with you, I struggle with it because it sounds so weird, and it just sounds like what you're doing is wrong. But if you can work it in and time it right, it sounds so right. So it's just a very strange thing. It's very out of my comfort zone, and it probably is for a lot of you. And that's why there's not only really the best of the best players go to that space, because it takes a very advanced way of hearing the music. All right, so I'm going to save the rest of this for the next part, for the part 2 video. We've learned a lot of information. Hopefully you've got some great ideas from what we've covered in this. Let me back up and play through the slow version, play along with the slow version of the jam track one more time so that you can hear everything we've learned and put it in context. And then I'll see you in part 2, where we'll go over the rest. And if you're not a premium member, remember you have access to the part 2 video, but you also get the tablature and the MP3 jam track, which I have in multiple tempos, so that you can practice playing everything that we're learning here and really understand how to do it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.